Hi, everybody, and welcome to a continued conversation with Carrie and Dani. We are going to pick up where we left off. We're talking a little bit about toxic relationships with organizations. We're using Steve Hassan's um, bite model of control. So, if you are curious and want to look that up, I know there's a survey that you can fill out to kind of give you an idea of where you and your organization stand on that uh, spectrum of toxicity, if you will. And we have made it. If you've looked, so there's a PDF on the website that talks about behavior control. So if you wanted to look at it while you are listening to us, then you will have visual aids. And I know I am a very visual person myself. So we made it to number 5 on under B, which is for behavior control. And so now we're at number 6, which manipulation and deprivation of sleep, which is not a problem in that I've never experienced that growing up in Adventist. It was very much emphasized that good sleep was important, so that was good. Number 7, financial exploitation, manipulation, or dependence. And I think this one is actually a pretty big one. Um, Tithe
Uh,
required to return a 10% tithe. When my husband was employed, it was a potential that he could face discipline or losing his job if we were not returning an honest tithe. So,
Hang on a minute. Are you telling me that the church paid you money, which came out of everybody else's tithes,
yep,
and then you still had to tithe back to them?
yes, yep,
Talk
yeah. I mean, it was actually here in the U.S. Dani, your pause. I'll just
about them running like the government and cutting money off you always.
yep,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Nope, you're good now. Um,
So we have a bit of a really bad weather here at the moment,
okay,
and so I might
totally fine.
click in and out a bit. And I'm still a bit croaky anyway, so I'll still need you to do some most of the talking, or I'll start
Yeah,
coughing.
that's no problem. So it was literally the conference would phone the local treasurer of the church and double check to make sure my husband and I were returning tithe, which was an invasion of our privacy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But that was something, and here's kind of the funny thing. So in how tax laws work, I don't know, it might be different now because pastors have their own tax code here. Like there's lots of things you can write off if you're a pastor. You can write off expenses for your home because it's considered a parsonage. We could actually write off or use the returning of tithe as a business expense.
Yes, you can do
Yep.
that over here. I'm pitched because I remember. Yes, you can do that here, writing.
Yep.
I think it's with normal members and things. I think the thing that concerns me the most now when I look back, and I'm only looking back from a year out. I know you're looking back from a long way out,
Hmm.
and I still don't feel like I'm totally out, even because it's so hard to let go of things that have been ingrained into me,
Oh yeah.
like brainwashed in.
Yep.
Um, the thing that concerns me the most looking back was that it was equated to going to heaven.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's like a religious duty that's part of
Hmm.
getting to heaven. Um,
And it wasn't simply just a 10% tithe. It was then an additional um, offering was expected to cover local church budget and missions and that kind of stuff. Because the local church only kept 10, the didn't keep the tithe that went straight up to the state level conference
yeah.
or local, however you guys term it there, but that went up to the church governance. And then also wills were a big thing. When you're writing
Oh,
up your
yes.
will, um,
Yep. My
we
friend's dad was the lawyer for the church down here,
mhm,
and at all the big church meetings and stuff, they used to have people that would write your will out, and they'd take it was all free, and you'd leave the church a tithe, and then it went through the church appointed lawyer.
yeah. Yep. Yep. I mean, I have multiple stories about how that can go sideways. If you don't read the fine print, you don't understanding what you're signing, the church will take advantage,
Um,
and leave your relatives high and dry if you don't know exactly what you're signing, you know.
tithe was one of the things that my mum turned out to be a bit of a rebel on,
Okay.
and She knew what it was like to do things really hard and to not have enough money. And I have to be honest, there was a point there where the church was really helpful, especially the sanitarium where she was working in the health food
Mhm.
place. They'd give her free seconds products and stuff to bring home to make sure that we all ate and
Mhm.
had food. Um, but I don't know quite how it came about. So it's probably somewhere when I was around 15 or 16, somewhere in there. I can remember mum just deciding she wasn't going to pay tithe to the church anymore. Um, and I think all I remember is basically she just said, we're supposed to be good stewards of our money according to the Bible. And that means that if I'm going to give my tithe to the church, I need to believe that they're looking after it properly.
Yep.
And she didn't think they were doing enough to help poor people. And so she started putting her tithe in a separate bank account. And she started saying, God will tell me who to give it to.
Yeah.
And people people would turn up that had kids and no money or no food, and she'd go buy groceries for them or all sorts of things. And she did that a few times when I was younger, and it probably wasn't until I was in my late teens that she got really, really big time into it. And then all her money and stuff went through helping people at the women's refuge. She'd buy food or clothing and stuff for them, and really, really practical things. So
Yeah.
that was but I don't recall ever being that radical.
No. And I think now that we're out of that system, we do give money to our local church or to whatever ministries we feel. But I think the concept of a mandatory 10% is triggering for my husband and I right now. Um, it's more of we're going to do, the Lord has blessed us. And so for us to be able to be good stewards, we want to make sure that that money is being used in a way that's actually going to enhance the kingdom. And I think sometimes how everything is arranged with multiple levels of bureaucracy, I'm sure that there would be a more financially efficient way of doing it than the Adventist Church is currently doing it. But I don't know enough about that to really speak. So let's move on to the next one. So number 8 is to restrict leisure, entertainment, and vacation time. So that one is one that, I mean, you weren't, I went to my first movie, I think, when I was in high school, and I felt very guilty about it.
Because
Um,
the angels leave you at the door. They don't go inside, right?
yeah, I mean, I
Your guardian
bravely,
angel won't follow you into a movie theater, is what we were always taught.
yeah. I mean, the first movie I ever went to was The American President. I don't know if you saw that one. It was a very good, it's a good feel good little, movie. So I went to see that one, and so it was a good movie. But yeah, it was definitely your leisure time, competitive sports. If as competitive sports were frowned upon quite a bit, especially competing with other schools. Of course, not on Sabbath, no dancing for the most part, and that kind of stuff. But I think that one's fairly self-explanatory. Do you have anything to add on that one, Dani?
Don't get me started. I could take up a whole meeting complaining about all the activities I never got to engage in, enjoy, and
Yep,
and some of the dreams I had growing up that I never couldn't do because you
Sabbath.
couldn't participate because yes, Saturday, not just Saturday, but Friday night to sunset, and
Yep.
oh my
Yep.
goodness. When we were kids and we lived in Tasmania, that
Uh-huh.
was just, I can't even begin to describe to you when we were little kids what an absolute misery in summer Saturdays were because of the sunset to sunset thing. And I don't know what where the sun sets for the equator and stuff for you, but when we were living in Tasmania and stuff, and we still get it here actually now that we've moved down here, twilight. It can still be broad daylight at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night.
Where my in-laws live, way up in northern Minnesota, it's still, I mean, you can see outside till sometimes 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
Well,
Where we're at, I think the latest is about 9:30.
it's a really, really long time for a kid to have a giant list of you can't do this, 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 you can't even talk about this. Like you can't talk about what you're going to do tomorrow because it's Sabbath time.
Hmm.
You can't make plans for the next day or for the rest of the week or anything during God's time.
And when in the summer when it's real hot, you can't go swimming. You can't have water fights because we would get squirt guns and hoses and douse each other in the summertime, but you couldn't do that. At least I don't remember not doing that. I knew that we could go wading up to maybe just above our knees, but that's about it for Sabbath.
Yep.
Um, so if you do you want to move on to the
Yeah.
next one?
Oh yeah, just keep going. It's
Okay.
just
Number 9 is
seriously.
major time spent with group indoctrination and rituals and or self-indoctrination, including the internet. So I think it's a
Mm.
lot of you think the Sabbath School Quarterly. I mean, a lot of people that's how they would spend their devotional time is going through the Sabbath School Quarterly, and there's a lesson every day. So every day you're getting your dose of scripture, you're getting your dose of Ellen White, you're getting your dose of what the world church wants you to hear because those who aren't familiar with the Sabbath School Quarterly, it's the same material across the world,
Yep, the
same one,
whole world.
the whole world. You can
I used to
find
like that. I thought it
it,
was so cool that
it
I could
is
go to America and they'd be studying the same thing I was studying in Australia or New Zealand. But
yeah,
as an adult now, it doesn't seem, you know, yeah, looking back, it doesn't have quite the same feeling.
yeah, yep,
Um, it, it still does. There's still a part of me that misses that sense of belonging,
mm-hmm,
but it's not worth the sacrifice of all the lies I was taught and the things that aren't true.
yeah,
Um, So when I was growing up, it was the Sabbath school, like, it's the Sabbath school quarterly. So what you studied for your Bible study thing at church every week. So like the equivalent of Sunday school for those that don't know what that is. So there was that, and that we would do that in the evenings before we went to bed. And then every morning we had Maranatha, the church done Maranatha devotional books. Maranatha.
mm-hmm.
Do you get that? Yep.
I think so.
So we had those. The church prints out its own special morning devotions,
Yep.
generally with a Bible verse, but not always, mostly Ellen White quotes. And so a little inspirational reading. And so we'd get that every morning before we went to school. And then at school, we had Bible class. So it was taught it to us there. And then when we got to secondary school, as well as having Bible class 4 or 5 times a week, we also had chapel where they taught it to us again. And then we also had a like half-hour meeting in our home groups where we also did Bible studies before we started school. So it
Mm-hmm,
was layers upon layers upon layers.
mm-hmm,
And then that was without youth group. And youth group was great, of course, because we went camping and we learnt to tie knots
mm-hmm.
and we learnt to light fires using little rub together sticks and stuff so that we could be ready to survive the persecution at the end of time. It was so good of them to prepare us, like, with
Yep.
physical skills as well as
Yep.
emotional ones. But again, just when I look back, it was just layer upon layer
Yeah.
upon layer upon layer. And someone said to me, it wasn't you, it was one of my other friends. They said to me, sometime in the last 4 weeks, they said, "Do you realize how lucky you are, Danielle, that you got out?" And I went, "What?"
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "I've still got family that are quite high up in the church hierarchy and stuff." They said, "And if you look at it realistically, look how everything's layered upon everything. Look how when you were a child, you were taught that if someone says something against the church, it's because it's the devil trying to tempt and shake you out of the true place. Look at
Yep.
all the things you've been taught. Listen to all the voices in your head that you had when you heard something that wasn't in line with what the church said.
Mm-hmm.
And all those voices were trained into you so that you would never, ever leave and get out. Do they realize it's a miracle that you got out?" It was about 3 weeks ago. Someone said that to me, and suddenly I went, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yep.
It was, and I don't know if I'll ever fully be out because you can't fully disconnect from the things that have been brainwashed into you all your life. But
Well,
I
I
am
mean, there's
thankful
such
that I've learned different truths.
Yeah, there's so much, and I think I've heard on, one of it might have been Cults to Consciousness, where they said they think it takes like 20 years to really clean your brain out. So, I mean, I'm like 3 years in, maybe four. I can't remember. I don't remember
I'm
dates
one.
very well.
I'm 1 year in.
So give yourself some grace, Dani.
It's and even now talking about this stuff, even now, there's still the argument sometimes, even discussing this with you, there's the in my head between what I know and how I feel. So a lot of what we feel when it comes to trauma and stuff, a lot of what your body just reacts and feels based on what it
Hmm.
believes.
Hmm.
And all this stuff happens at a subconscious level. And it's not till you speak it and make it conscious that you can then change your reality of it.
Hmm.
And so even when we first started talking about this stuff, if I stopped and thought about it, I'm not wearing probably quite as warm a clothes as I maybe should be wearing for the temperature of the day. And I would say that my heart rate's not high, but it's slightly higher than what I would expect it to be, considering that I'm sitting in a chair having a conversation with someone that I like.
Uh-huh.
But all these things are the things that are regulated by your central nervous system, which is affected
Right.
by trauma and by what you believe. And so it's been ingrained into me my whole life that you never say anything bad about the church, because I might say something bad about the Adventist church. And maybe it's the only church that someone's going to ever meet, and they won't join the church because of something they heard me say. And then they will never get to heaven, and it'll be all my fault. And so, even though my head logically goes, that is so not true, that makes God powerless. That
Yes.
is not a worldview where God is in control. That is not a worldview of a loving God. That is not That's not a worldview where God is having a relation, as a relationship with every person. So all these things in my head, I know that's wrong, but there's still what's programmed into me from being a child that says, danger, danger, danger.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. And it's still, I mean, I don't think we'll ever fully get comfortable speaking out about some of the things that we do. Just but I think it's important to remember the gravity too of some of the stuff that we're talking about as well, because we hope that somebody's going to stumble across or see our stuff and it could help them make a life-changing decision. So anyway, number 10 is permission required for major decisions. I'm assuming you're talking about moving or whatever. No.
yeah,
No. I mean, the only thing maybe is marriage. If you wanted to marry somebody who wasn't an Adventist, chances are back when I was growing up, you probably couldn't get an Adventist pastor to perform the ceremony in an Adventist church. I
nope.
think I think some churches have become a little more lax on that. Maybe, maybe not. But number 11, rewards and punishments are used to modify behaviors, both positive and negative. So that I think is maybe it's not overt, but it's definitely there. Like you're not gonna get a church office if they don't think you're behaving the way you're supposed to, if you're not returning the tithe that you're supposed to be returning. Um,
Nope.
but so I
And
mean,
there's plenty of pastors out there can tell you. And the more you listen to like SDA Q&A and hear the stories of all the people that were church pastors, like your husband left voluntarily, but plenty of stories on Peter Dixon's channel from church pastors saying, I just asked some questions about this or that, and that was it.
yep, yep,
I lost my job. And while it may not sound like a big deal to say I've lost my job, I know your husband's been blessed in a different way, but when I think of some of the church pastors, I know they've grown up in the Adventist church. They were just as indoctrinated as I was. They trained for their life career in an Adventist institution. And actually, they don't have any skills that are useful outside the Adventist church. This is a really big deal.
I know a handful of gentlemen that for one reason or another are no longer actively working as a pastor, an Adventist pastor, and they're working as chaplains, like on-call hospital chaplains, which is
Yeah.
not as good of a steady income to support their family, and so it's fortunately for my husband and I and our family, he had another other skills that he has a bachelor's degree in something that's not theology, so he was able to find another job. But um yeah, just
I think the rewards and punishments used to modify behavior, positive and negative. I think that that's really subtle and can be easily missed.
mhm,
When I think back to one of the churches I attended in the last 10 years, when I think back, it's so reward and punishment. Who got to control the church orchestra and teach it? Out of the five or six piano organists, who got to be the organist? And who actually kept getting ignored and overlooked all the time and pushed to the side? And while that doesn't sound like a big deal, um, if you think of it instead of a church as a gang,
mhm,
it's a sense of belonging that threatens your safety.
mhm,
People get together in groups and stuff for safety. Animals that are herd animals, it's standing in the herds all about, it's about safety. It's about Maslow's hierarchy of essential needs.
mhm.
And a sense of belonging is way up there. Um, and so yeah, I think they're really subtle about it. But when you start to look into it, it's huge.
Yep, it's there, and I think
Um,
it's even more insidious than it being overt, just because you don't really know. Sometimes you don't know where you stand, and that it can make it tough. So
well, it
number,
makes it hard all round because I know for me, when I wasn't towing the line and doing the right thing, it was things like, you got a church of a couple of hundred people, but there's no one to sit next to at church lunch because you're on the outside of things. Um,
nobody to pair up with at foot washing during communion.
Oh my goodness, that was such a trauma for me. I used to avoid Saturdays because of that exact reason.
Oh yeah,
And a whole
church
pile of things.
attendance goes way down because of foot washing.
It's just it is there. It
Mhm.
really, really, really is there.
It's that judgy social hierarchy, and anyway, number 12, I think what I was going to start saying, I think we'll work with 12. Says discourage individualism and encourage groupthink. So I never felt comfortable in Sabbath school saying something that was, well, maybe the last couple years I got a little more brave and a little more snarky, because we were still in the church, but my husband wasn't actively employed by the church. And so I felt like I had more freedom to speak my mind. But now I can say in our church group, we run a marriage ministry, there's other things. I can just say, I don't really know what I believe right now. I don't
Yeah.
know. I know that I'm saved. I know Jesus loves me. I know God loves me, and I'm doing the best that I can, but I don't know for sure. Like this whole and everybody's like, oh, okay. Like I don't think anybody cares
Mm.
that's, I
Yeah.
mean, yes, they want they want me to be happy and know what I believe, but I don't think there's absolutely no way I could say that in an adult Sabbath school discussion and not have some kind of consequence.
Yeah. No, you can't. It's all about the group think. It's all about funneling up the hierarchy. It's all about the people at the top. It's all about the big fancy evangelists that come over and you go to listen to them. It's
Mm-hmm.
you know, there was a period of time where I don't know quite how it all come about. I had heard that my brother was having some issues with heroin, and he'd been going to some seances, and there was some odd stuff going in his life. And of course, the Adventist Church will teach that if one person in the family is into bad stuff, then, especially spiritual stuff, it can come through and gives the devil an in to attack you
Mm-hmm.
as well. But there was a time when I definitely was having some issues um, with. And so looking back now, I wonder, was I really having issues? Did I actually have visitations from evil spirits, or was I experiencing some of the normal consequences of severe trauma? But despite what it was, I was in an Adventist church that said that. feeling these things at night and stuff was the manifestations of evil spirits. And so I contacted someone not too far from us, and I can remember saying to him, "Oh, look, I don't know who else to call, but I know you're not too far away. Can you just talk to me for a little bit about this?" And they prayed with me, and I felt better.
Hmm.
Okay, and so could be it's exactly what it was. Could be like trauma co-regulation. Talking to someone that's out of the trauma helps bring everything down. Could be psychosomatic. I believed it, so it went away. Who knows? Because, like you said, I don't know what I believe about it all now because the worldview's shifted. But this same person was running a home group, and our church was huge at the time that I was attending. It had about 800 attending members and more on the books, so it was really easy to get lost.
Hmm.
I know you go to a mega church, it's even bigger than that, but that was a really big church for the Adventist circles here.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And so I really wanted to be part of stuff, and they kept pushing this whole home group thing. So I went to home group. The closest home group to me that I could get into was about a 40-minute drive away, and
Okay.
it was on someone's farm. And so I was driving down to this, and the same guy that I'd called that time and that had prayed for me was running it.
Hmm.
Um, I'd only ever had one interaction with him that wasn't so great, and that was about health issues. He was trained in Weimar
Yep.
in the
Yep.
States.
Yep.
He was a Weimar graduate, so you know where this is going.
Yes.
And he actually was doing some stuff, and I had some problems with my neck from a motorbike accident, and we had argued about stuff. He wanted to like twist and crunch my neck, and I was like, no. And he got really angry because I didn't trust him, and then refused to help me, which really upset me. Whereas now I still see an osteopath or a chiropractor, and they're like, you know what? If you don't want your neck just like twisted till it cracks, we've got five other ways of doing things. It's
Yeah,
fine.
they've got like little
But to this guy,
activators and things. Yeah.
yep, but to this thing, growing up in the Adventist church, this is a male in a position of authority over me spiritually. So you either trust them or that's it. Your history. Yeah, I went along to the home group and he was running it, and it was the only one available, and it was all right. And I'd got about 4 or 5 weeks, and I can't even think what we were studying, but whatever it was, I just couldn't quite get my head around it. What they were saying didn't make sense quite. And so I had some questions, and I asked my questions in home group. I mean, there's only 10 people there. That's what it's for, right? Home group.
Right.
So I ask my questions, and so I'm asking questions and I'm asking questions, and I'm like, trying to wrestle these thoughts out of my head. And I was excited to have somewhere that I could wrestle these thoughts out and figure stuff out. And anyway, took me aside later in the week after home group and said, Danielle, there's some people, there's a person in our home group that's not an Adventist, and we don't want you, me, ruining their chance to have a relationship with God. So I either needed to agree to never ask any more questions, or I was told I was not allowed to come back to home group again. I got kicked out of church Bible study for asking questions.
Yeah, they don't want you to interfere with other people. And my thought then would have been, well, like when I was deep in, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But now I'm like, so you don't want people to have informed consent before they join an organization. Like if you're asking
And not
questions,
even that. Why is a non-Adventist questions more important than my questions? Who gets to decide whose questions are the most important?
yep, apparently he
Sorry,
got to decide. He thought he could.
I
Yeah.
still see him on television quite a bit. He preaches on some of our one of our super conservative TV channels here in New Zealand, and every time I see it, I want to vomit and I change channels.
Yeah. Ugh.
It's just,
Lucky number 13. Let's see what it says. They impose rigid rules and regulations.
can we just say yes and leave it at that?
Yep.
The church has so many rigid rules and regulations,
Yep.
it's ridiculous.
Yep. Yep. I think we
Because
kind of
let's
talked about
face it,
most of them already, but
well, not only that, but if someone listening to this isn't an Adventist and they want to know, they can Google them. If you
yep,
are an Adventist and you can't see them, then me listing them is not going to help your blindness.
exactly. Exactly. So the next four I'm just going to read because these are ones that are not part of the conversation, but it's part of the bite model. So 14 is punish disobedience by beating, torture, burning, curing, rape, or tattoo or branding. No.
No,
15, threaten harm to family and friends.
no,
No,
church doesn't do that.
no, no. Force an individual to rape or be raped. No. 17,
Protect rapists. The church will do that, but they don't force it to occur.
correct. Yes. 17, encourage or engage in corporal punishment. I think to a certain degree, potentially spanking kids or that kind of stuff, depending on your brand of Adventism, I guess I could say that might be something that you um
We definitely grew up in a spare the rod and spoil the child. It was definitely encouraged to when I was when I was young anyway. It was definitely encouraged
sure.
to you know put the jug cord or the broom handle to good use.
Ooh, yeah.
As a parent, it was a parent's job to train the sin out of their children.
Mm-hmm.
I
18,
know my
instill dependency and obedience. So yes, that is part of it. You feel like you're dependent, and we only have a few minutes remaining on our thing.
not
So
again
I
already.
know we'll go through really quick. Dependency and obedience. I think that's more of a social dependency potentially. I
Yep.
think we've already touched on that lightly.
A
19,
spiritual dependency. You have to be
spiritual
an Adventist or you're
dependency.
not going to get to heaven.
Yep. Yep. Number 19, kidnapping, no. Beating, no. Torture, no. Rape, no. 23, separation of families. Um, that, and I hadn't thought of this, but the documentation that Steve Daly said was boarding schools because they do separate the kids from their families at a key part of time. And I
Mm.
think maybe the side of that, so I think that they were started because people were afraid to send their kids to public school, so they sent them out. I don't think that maybe I think an unintentional consequence of that is separating them from their families. Um, I never sent our kids to boarding school. We were fortunate enough to live close enough that we could drive the kids, so they never stayed in the dorm. Um,
Yep.
24, imprisonment, no. Murder, no. So, I mean, luckily
One
our
done.
church didn't murder people, as far as we know.
Well, maybe emotionally, but not literally, no.
Right, exactly. So I think
So
this is a good overview of the behavioral control of a toxic organization model. Um,
there's still a whole pile more sections, isn't there?
yeah, well, we've got the information control, and I think a lot of
Emotional
that,
control,
yep, thought
thought
control and
control.
then emotional control. So I think those are ones, I think the behavior control is the one I think that's the easiest to talk about as far as getting an
Yeah.
examples. Um, but we, folks that are listening and watching, we will be doing some follow-up videos on the last three sections of the bite model. I'm sure we will have plenty to talk about.
Yep, we might not get back to it for a little while. We'll see how
Yeah,
things go. Who knows what's going to happen in the next week?
exactly. I mean, it's we like to, if there's something that we feel that we're impressed to talk about, or something happens in either one of our lives or the life of a friend or a family member, it can definitely change it. But um,
Or the lives of you, our listener. If there's anything in particular
yes,
that's happened to you and you want to hear just what we think about it or whatever, just drop us a note, send us a join our Facebook group, put a little message in there, or if you're not worried about other people seeing it, drop a note below
yep,
and
exactly.
just say. And if you're brave, come on and say it yourself.
Yeah, we would
We're
love
not
to.
scary, really.
Was no, we're not. And you don't even really need any special equipment, so you just need to have a something with a camera and an internet connection, and then we'll make it work. But a pleasure as always, Dani, having a conversation about the things that we spent. I mean, I spent over 40 years and you were around that as
Over
well.
50.
I was just gonna say
Over over 50 years for
over
me.
50 years in, and I think it's and you said, and this an analogy kind of hit me. You said that when you're in it, you don't see it. And I was thinking we were talking about layers. And I think it's like living in the center of an onion. When you're in the center of an onion, you don't know how many layers are on the outside, But once you leave the onion and you look back, you're like, well, no wonder I couldn't see
Mm,
the outside because there's so many layers and I couldn't see where I was at,
yeah.
and I've several times like, how did I think so much of this was okay? But that's all I knew,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
my favorite story for that is the one about the elephant at the circus. I remember, I've said it before, but I remember going to the circus and they had an elephant and he was chained with a really small chain. And at any point, the elephant could have broken it and walked off. And it was one that someone said to me, um, the story someone said to me was so helpful to me. And I keep thinking, what you said, Carrie, the reason you couldn't see it or why you can't do any different is because like me, you were born into it. And so the elephant, it can break that chain. And it doesn't. Why? Because it doesn't know that it can, because it was chained when it was a baby. It was chained when it was too young, and it gives
Yeah,
up. And it's a form of learned helplessness where everything is normalized.
yeah, absolutely. So all right, folks, we will see you next time with another conversation with Carrie and Dani. I hope everybody has a great day. I hope we all learned a little something, and maybe we're also entertained as well. So we will see you all next time.